If you're in the market for a large body-on-frame 3-row SUV, the Chevrolet Tahoe is the OG. For the past 30 years since this nameplate came out, it has consistently been the best-selling vehicle in its class. Now for 2025, Chevy is giving the Tahoe its first full refresh, and it's a pretty significant one. We're talking about brand new styling in the front and the rear, all new wheel designs, including a first ever 24-inch wheel, and a fully redesigned interior with a massive, best-in-class 17.7-inch display. So today we're actually out here in Fort Worth, Texas, basically where the Tahoe is built, to finally get behind the wheel. And the big question I want answered: has Chevrolet made enough changes to the Tahoe to keep this vehicle the best in the segment? Stay tuned to find out. Now, before we get into the exterior styling changes that Chevy has made for 2025, I thought I'd remind you guys what's going on underneath the hood. Now, the Tahoe and the Yukon and the Escalade, they are one of the last vehicles in their segment that continue to offer a V8 engine. There's a choice between either the 5.3-liter V8, this optional 6.2-liter V8, and there's also an updated 3-liter turbo diesel inline 6. We'll be showing you a separate review on the inline 6 when we get a hold of a Suburban sometime tomorrow. But until then, let's go ahead and focus on this powertrain. This is the up-level engine that comes standard on this top-of-the-line High Country. It's a 6.2-liter naturally aspirated pushrod V8 with their company's gasoline direct injection. The power outputs are unchanged: 420 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque. Now, if you guys go for the RST with the performance package, it does increase the power to 433 horsepower and 467 pound-feet of torque. That's courtesy of an exhaust system, which is not on this particular one here. Power flows through a 10-speed automatic transmission. That's a GM design transmission, and either rear or full-time four-wheel drive is going to be available. This model here that we're showing you is four-wheel drive. Fuel economy is going to be right around 15 in the city, 20 on the highway. It depends based on which trim level configuration you get, whether you get two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. This vehicle has roughly a 24-gallon fuel tank. You're looking at around 400-ish miles of range on a full tank. Premium is going to be recommended for this model here. Now, in terms of the 0 to 60, we've gotten around 6 seconds in our previous testing, which we'll try to do it again here out in Texas when we get this vehicle out on the road. And in terms of top speed should be around 120 miles an hour. Towing capacity for the 6.2 is around 300 pounds. The best towing capacity is going to be in the 5.3-liter V8, which will max out at 8,400 pounds. And as this car sits, it weighs in at around 5,700 pounds. If you guys go for the Suburban, it's going to be around 200 pounds heavier. But let's go ahead and close up the hood here and talk about the exterior styling. Now, first of all, the design of this vehicle certainly is much more attractive in my opinion. I mean, when Chevy first introduced this all-new 5th generation back in 2021, it was a radical redesign because this is the first time that Chevy finally put an independent rear suspension on the vehicle, and they also moved it to a new frame. So for 2025, the bold front end, I think, is a big improvement. You can see you've got the signature bow tie logo here, or bow tie twin style grille with the yellow painted or gold accented Chevrolet bow tie logo. You can also get a black accent. This High Country also includes some chrome and black accents. This color here is called Lakeshore Blue Metallic. It's a really beautiful looking color. I think it's an extra charge for like an extra $625. You can see the headlights have been fully redesigned. In fact, if you guys go for the upper trims, there's a total of 6 trim levels. I think it's on the Premier, it's standard, available on the Z71. You get kind of a new LED light signature with an animation display. So when you approach the vehicle, it'll do a little animation sequence to greet you. You can see all of them have these updated LED daytime running lights, LED turn signals, LED low and high beams, and then you also get LED fog lights down here. Overall, I think it's a successful update. Let me know in the comment section below if you guys prefer the old model or this new refreshed version. The High Country trim that you're seeing here has lots of chrome all over it, which you can get this vehicle with some black accents if you go for the RST badge. This is supposed to be more of the luxury-oriented version, kind of like if you guys don't want to necessarily go all the way up to an Escalade or a Yukon, this is going to give you most of the luxury features. Now, moving around the side profile, obviously this is a Tahoe. You can also get a Suburban, which is around 15 inches longer, but it has a wheelbase of around 121 inches long with an overall length of 210.7 inches long. When Chevy redesigned this vehicle 3 years ago or 4 years ago, it was literally the longest Tahoe ever, and they stretched it out to the max to give you way more interior space. These wheels, you can see Chevy has completely redesigned the wheels. They range from 18 inches all the way up to these massive 24-inch wheels. That's right, we now have a factory 24-inch wheel, which you can also get on the Yukon and the Escalade. It is a massive wheel with a multiple spoke design. In fact, the wheel itself is very busy. I'm not a fan of the way the wheel looks, but that's just a personal taste. You can see the tire sizes. This is a Bridgestone all-season tire, and it is wrapped in a 285 by 40 R24. So again, a massive tire, but again, you're gonna need that additional contact patch because this is a really big vehicle. Also massive brakes, and this model also comes standard with the company's air suspension. In fact, Chevrolet says they've totally redesigned and retuned the suspension. So now we've got adaptive dampers, which have been retuned, and the air suspension's been retuned. You can essentially raise and lower the vehicle up to 4 inches at its highest setting. Chevy says you get around 10 inches of ground clearance. At its mid setting, which is the setting you're gonna drive it in mostly, it'll have roughly 8 inches of ground clearance, and you can drop it down to 6 inches when you wanna access the vehicle a little bit better. Now, in terms of the rest of the profile, you can see there's a big High Country badge here in chrome to let everybody know you've got the highest spec version of the Tahoe. The mirrors you can see are body colored. They're also power folding. There's a full 360 camera on the vehicle. There's also those power retractable running boards to help you get in and out of the car. Lots of chrome. Again, if you guys don't like chrome, don't go for the High Country. You can see there's also bright silver accents here for the low profile roof rails. And then you can also see massive panoramic glass sunroof. Standard on this trim, I believe. It lets in a lot of light. It also opens up to vent air, which is nice. The basic shape of the vehicle hasn't changed because remember, this is just a very heavy refresh. So you're gonna mostly see just updates to the bumper, to the light clusters and so forth. You can see looking at the rear of the vehicle, the taillights have also been redesigned. They have a brand new light signature where I think Chevy has actually reversed the orientation of the lights. This portion here used to be flip-flopped, so you can see the taillights have kind of like a smoked and frosted appearance to them. They are full LED like you see. You can see back here, there's an actually a minimalist, or a minimum of badging back here. You can see just a Tahoe badge with the gold Chevy bow tie logo. The spoiler here is pretty nicely pronounced. It also cleverly hides the rear window wiper, which I really appreciate. This vehicle is also available with a digital camera rear view mirror. And then in terms of, you know, this little black badge or bar here that kind of connects the two taillights together, it's not an LED light bar, but it certainly makes it look a little bit more attractive. Down here at the lower fascia, you can see, this is how you can tell this is a High Country from the back. It actually has a rectangular quad outlet exhaust system. Now, a lot of other trims do offer the quad exhaust, so it's not exclusive to the High Country or the 6.2 liter V8, but the other trims will have a circular exhaust system. This is the rectangular one, and it certainly looks pretty good. Keep in mind, there's also an RST that has that performance exhaust system with a slightly meaner sound. Now, in terms of the cargo capacity, there is a hands-free power liftgate, but you don't even have to kick your foot underneath it. If you just stand back here with the key fob on you, it'll sense that you're back here and it'll open up the tailgate even though you haven't actually touched the button. And in terms of the cargo space, the Tahoe is among the best in the segment. Now, with the third row seat up, you can see Rob and myself have our 2 roller bags in here and our backpacks. It fits in here perfectly with room to spare. In fact, if you got rid of the backpacks, you could easily put another 2 more roller bags. These are 21-inch or 22-inch roller bags. Chevy says you get around 25.5 cubic feet of space. There is some space underneath the floor here to give you some nice hidden storage. If you want, you can also push this button right here. That will fold down the third row, and it kind of got stuck there because the second row seat needs to be pushed forward a little bit. But when you fold down the third row, you get a maximum of 72.5 cubic feet of space, which is honestly a ton. If you want to fold down the second row, Chevy says there's a maximum of 122.7 cubic feet. That's essentially minivan territory. And keep in mind, if that's not enough, we'll show you guys a separate review on a Suburban. The Suburban roughly gives you like another 15 to 20 more cubic feet of space. So again, this is going to give you a ton of space to carry people or stuff, or both, to be honest. So on the outside, Chevy made a bunch of changes for 2025, but on the interior portion, this is where the company also made some big upgrades, especially in the technology department. Now, before we get into that, let me show you guys the interior here in the seats. This particular one is the High Country trim, which also means it's kind of like the high luxury trim. This seat color here is this kind of mocha two-tone with the perforated leather with the contrast stitching and piping with heated and cooled seats. You also have this High Country badge embroidered into the actual head restraint. These seats adjust in 12 different ways. They also have a 2-person memory here on the driver's side. However, if you're looking for a massaging seat, this is where you're going to want to step it up to a Yukon Denali or an Escalade, because Chevy does not offer a massaging front seat in even their highest trim level. Now, getting inside, you can see that retractable running board is nice for helping short people like myself get in. As I pull myself in, you can see it'd be nice if there was a grab handle here, but it's relatively easy to get in and out of this vehicle. When I shut the door, the door has a nice solid sounding thunk. Remember, this is built on the new body on frame architecture that also underpins the Silverado that was introduced a few years ago. Now, here's the key fob for the vehicle. You can see this high trim also comes with their intelligent access key fob with the usual Chevy logo here. There's your usual buttons as well for lock, unlock, remote start, power liftgate. There's also a separate function here where you can open up the glass portion, or a panic function when you want to start the vehicle up. Start stop button is located down here. And you can hear that V8 engine fires up. It's a relatively quiet sounding engine, and it's not a hybrid or a mild hybrid. So you're gonna have to, if you want a hybrid technology, you're gonna have to go with a Sequoia, for example. GM doesn't offer any kind of hybrid. I'm closing the roof here a little bit so there isn't as much glare for the camera, but let's go ahead and talk about the rest of this interior really quick. First of all, if you guys have seen our review on the new Chevrolet Blazer EV, this interior should look very familiar. Every trim level of the Tahoe, including the base LS, comes with this massive 17.7-inch display with Google built in, their latest Android Automotive software. It also includes, as you can see here, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. That's Rob's iPhone 14 Pro Max that's connected to the car, and it looks fantastic. This is basically what I complained about in the Blazer. It didn't have this feature. All the EVs don't have this feature, but the gas-powered GM vehicles with this new screen do. So I really think that GM just needs to simplify it, offer it across the board, because it makes this screen here one of the best systems you're gonna find. In fact, it's the largest display in the segment. It's actually bigger versus the display in the Yukon by about 1.5 inches, so that's also really nice to see. Let's go ahead and go back to the door panel material over here. You can see there's a nice upper portion here that's covered in leather with the contrasting stitching. There's some real genuine wood decor that you're going to find. This is unique to the high country trim that makes it feel even more luxurious. Some metal accents here, of course. There's a nice padded armrest here. Down in this lower portion, there's some storage, but it is hard touch plastic. And then the window controls, they're one touch auto down for all four, but only the two front windows are auto up. I think at this price point, Chevy should have just made auto up down windows for all four as standard equipment. There's also power folding mirrors, of course, which is a really nice feature if you guys have a really big vehicle like this. And then in terms of the dashboard materials, you can see there's a soft touch injection molded plastic here with some faux contrast stitching. This is real leather here, which is perforated, more high country badge, more of that real wood decor, which, by the way, the wood, I love the color of the wood. I love how it's a matte finish. It looks and feels really genuine, which is nice with the aluminum trim. Some real leather over here, of course. And then the steering wheel, you can see it's a power tilt telescoping, which is nice. You have paddles on the wheel here to control the 10-speed auto, and you also have their Super Cruise, which is available. Their Super Cruise is their hands-free driving. It's available on every trim except for the LS. Now, it is probably optional. I bet you it's also optional on this high country. We don't have the final option and packaging just yet because this vehicle isn't quite on sale just yet. The high country also includes this high country badge here at the lower portion of the steering wheel. This wheel also has a really thick rim, really nice leather. This is essentially the same steering wheel that we've seen in the new Chevrolet Blazer EV, which kind of flows nicely into this 11-inch digital instrument cluster. Now, this cluster, as you can see, has a traditional look where you can customize it. So this is the more traditional 2-dial look if you guys want it to look more like an analog setup. If I push this button here, you can see that pulls up the actual built-in Google navigation, which takes up the entire screen, which is nice. So I push that again. That's the Apple CarPlay navigation system, so that's really nice. Go to there, you can see there's your driver assistance screen. There's kind of like a relaxed screen where you only have just the digital speedo, so it's not overwhelming you. That's a single dial look. And then there's the twin dial look. So I actually prefer the twin dial look. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys like yourself. There's also a heads up display that's 15 inches on this trim, although I don't love this chunky plastic area here that projects the heads up display into the windshield. I just think that Chevy could have made this a little bit less intrusive because it kind of raises the dashboard height as well when you kind of see through the dash. But overall, you can see, going back to the native system here, there are a nice mixture of buttons and digital controls. So you can see on the lower portion here, this is where you're going to find your tri-zone climate control. You can adjust the temperature from the screen over here, or you can also do this traditional dial here. I like how Chevy gives you two different options, two different ways to control it. The cooled seat function, however, or the heated seat has been moved into the display. So Chevy used to offer an actual hard button for that. Now it's located at this bottom portion where it always stays put. If you push the heated seat, you can see there's two different types of heated seat, either on the bottom cushion and the seat back, or just on the seat back itself. The speed of it and the software, however, is much improved. If I go back to the native system here, you can see it takes up the entire display, and it's really quick and snappy. It's really easy to use. Going to the Google display, you can see it takes up the entire display as well. It also has Google built in, so you can give it voice commands as well. And you can see there's also apps you can download from the Google Play Store. So you can put Waze in here, you can put Spotify, but if you want Apple Music, for example, you have to have the CarPlay, which is something that you can't get in something like the Blazer EV. Now down here at the center console, you can see lots of storage and also really nice leather. I don't love the piano black plastic, however, you can see this is a really new car and it has lots of fingerprints and smudges already, so that'll drive my OCD crazy. I do appreciate all the storage, however, you can see there's a wireless phone charging pad. Rob's iPhone 14 Pro Max is sitting there with 2 USB charging ports. Big, large capacity cup holders. You also have some nice storage to the side of the actual center console. And then over here, you can see this is nice and padded with some cross stitching. And if you open this up, it offers a decent amount of storage as well. However, you're probably noticing this is not the deepest storage well, and that's because Chevy offers this really cool feature where you can basically push this button right here and make sure people's legs aren't in the way, but this will essentially power retract back into the center console area. And it actually goes a pretty far distance, which is nice. You can see it reveals a pretty large storage area, although if you wanted to put something over here, I'd question it'll probably get crushed when you want to close it back. Now thankfully there is a nice hidden storage compartment here. It's not the largest area, but it's kind of a cool lockable storage area where you can hide a couple things. And if you guys are wondering, when you have this flipped open, you can also still push that and slide this forward. So that's also a really nice touch. So you can kind of leave this open if you'd like, push it all the way back and still get the armrest feature. So that's a really nice thing to have. This power sliding console is standard on the higher trims. It's available on some of the lower trims, which is nice. You can see moving above here, there's a digital camera rearview mirror, so you can kind of go to a traditional auto dimming or go to that camera style. There's lots of LED map lighting in here. There's also that big sunroof, so let me go ahead and open this up entirely. This panoramic roof is standard, I believe, on the High Country. It goes back into the second row, and you can also slide the roof open if you want to vent air. And as you can see, there's a built-in sunshade or wind deflector. And then when this opens up, it opens up over the entire front seat area, which is nice. This is definitely a large opening to kind of help get fresh air and additional light back into the cabin. But overall, the seats are comfortable. Material quality seems good. Lots of great technology. So I would say that Chevy pretty much knocked it out of the park with the interior. And it certainly makes you question the need to go to something like a Yukon or an Escalade. However, if you do want to go to that, you're also going to get an even more impressive audio system. This is just the upgraded Bose stereo system that you're going to find on this higher trim. It sounds pretty good, but again, if you want something more impressive, the Escalade and the Yukon offer additional speakers and a different branded premium audio system. Now moving into the backseat area of the new Tahoe, this is where Chevy really didn't make any changes, but they didn't really need to because this is still one of the most spacious back seats that you're going to find. Now obviously this High Country trim comes with these captain's chairs, these second row captain's chairs. That does limit the seating capacity to 7. However, if you guys want on the lower trims, you can get a bench where you can also get 8 passenger seating capacity. You can see the beautiful leather with the contrast stitching is also carried over back here. And to get back here as well, there's a nice little grab handle. As I get in, hoist myself in, there's actually a really easy step-in height for somebody like myself once you actually have that running board. Once I shut the door, you can see the door has the same solid sounding thunk. And I'm also happy to report that the materials back here have been carried over. So you have the same beautiful leather with the contrast stitching, more aluminum and real wood trim, nice and padded over here. Down in this lower area, there's some storage and there's some hard touch plastic. But what I noticed is missing on this top trim, I would have liked to see some manual retractable sunshades. Now I did notice that other vehicles in the segment don't offer that feature, so it'd be nice to see, Chevrolet be one of the first to offer it. But overall, as you can see, the legroom space is among the best in the class. There's a little over 40 inches of legroom back here, which again, with this really low floor, the flat floor in the center, plenty of foot space underneath the seats. I can easily get back here and cross my legs and get comfortable. This is where I basically have the seat to drive for my driving position. Headroom space, I have a good maybe 2-ish inches of clearance between my head and the ceiling, and that's because this takes up a little bit of room. So if you're a taller passenger, you might want to double check that to see if you can actually fit. In terms of features, there's cup holders here. You have your own set of third row climate controls back here, so it's a 3-zone. You have 3 level heated seats, 2 USB-C charging ports, an HDMI plug, and an actual power outlet here. The one thing that this car is missing, however, are ventilated second row seats. You can get that on some of the competitors. I think if you want that feature, you have to go to the Yukon or you have to go to the Escalade. So there's a reason why GM wants you to kind of go up the corporate ladder. My particular test car also has the optional rear seat entertainment package. You can see it actually has streaming services built in like Hulu and YouTube. You can also go to a web browser, which is kind of cool actually. You can see, pull up the Chevy website there or go to whatever you'd like. This car also has a built-in rolling hotspot. So that kind of makes the rear seat entertainment package kind of worth it, to be honest, if you guys don't feel like getting a tablet for your kids. However, I don't have final pricing on these rear seat entertainment screens. I believe the screen size is around 14.5 inches, so it's a pretty good size, and it looks fairly modern. It also can hook up to wireless headphones. There's also an armrest here that folds down, which is nice. There's a big pass-through back here to get into the third row area, obviously, or if you guys don't want to use this, Chevy also has a little way that you can get in by folding the seats down. Now there's two levers here. You basically pull on the lever that's on the inside, pull it once, it kind of folds the seat down, pull it again, and you can see it flips it forward. Now that's a problem if you guys have a child seat here. So if you have a child seat anchored, you can't technically do this, so you'll have to go in through the center. But let me go ahead and get back here and show you guys the space. Now, fold the seat back into position and pull it back up, and you can see it doesn't actually return to the farthest back position. Now, when it's in this position, you can see there's a ton of legroom back here. However, the big test for me is always seeing what the legroom is like when the second row seat is all the way back. So go ahead and do that. I'm 5'7", and you can see my knees aren't even touching the back of this. Chevy says you have around 34 inches of legroom back here, which is actually a pretty good amount. Keep in mind, if you need more third row legroom, the Suburban offers an additional 1.5 inches. So that's kind of a nice little touch. You can see headroom space is pretty good. The floor is also nice and low, and that's because of that independent rear suspension. In fact, when Chevy redesigned the Tahoe back in 2021, they added around 10 more inches of third row legroom, because the old one was just laughable considering how big it was for third row passengers. This new version, however, finally has adult-friendly space. There's also some features back here like third row air vents in the ceiling, LED map lighting. You have two USB ports, one here and one on the other side. There's also cup holders, and there's also a padded area here where I would rest my elbow. This window is a little on the smaller side. Like, there's this big chunky pillar right here. So if you guys need to see out of the side window back here, it's a little bit of a compromised view, but the vehicle is so wide you could easily fit 3 people across. And the seat back here is still actually relatively comfortable. So that's one of the reasons what makes the Tahoe so successful, is because there's tons of space in the first, second, and the third row, even for full-size adults. So here we are behind the wheel of the heavily revised 2025 Chevrolet Tahoe. Now, in terms of the driving dynamics portion of this video, the engines are pretty much unchanged. So we're driving a vehicle with the 6.2-liter naturally aspirated V8. It still makes the same 420 horsepower, 460 pound-feet of torque, and it's hooked up to a 10-speed automatic transmission, which is a pretty good powertrain combination. If you guys have been in other vehicles that use this powertrain, it's a really good engine, especially if you prefer more something like a traditional feel with its naturally aspirated V8. But let's go ahead and see what we can get 0 to 60 wise really quick here. Last time I tested one of these, I think I got like 5.9 seconds or something like that. So it's, well, actually, let's switch the drive mode over here to Sport really quick. And we'll brake torque it. 7.53 seconds there. Now, I will say that it is pretty warm out here, and this model we're driving is not really broken in. It's kind of an earlier pre-production car, so I'll have to wait until I get one back home to actually test out the 0 to 60 again, but I'd say that we should probably be able to do it, at least lop another second off that time. So it is a little surprising to me that it's a little slow, but you have to kind of keep in mind when we get one back home in our usual test road, that'll actually give us a better indication of the time. Now, in terms of the rest of the drive, GM essentially said, or Chevy said, that they have retuned the suspension and the steering in this vehicle. Now, we are rolling on these massive 24s, and they are some big wheels on a 285 width tire. The last time I drove a GM vehicle with 24s, it was the Silverado EV RST, and I did not like the way that thing rode. I thought it was really jittery, it was really bumpy, it was really unrefined. Now, I know that GM can do better, so now that we're in the driving portion here for this model, let's switch the drive mode back into normal, because in Sport, it makes the dampers a little bit more stiff. Keep in mind, we also have adaptive air suspension as well. I will say that the ride quality, while it is still a little bumpy, remember this is a body-on-frame vehicle, but we do have an independent rear suspension, which helps, but literally this is a perfect road to test it out because it's going over these railroad tracks and there's like bumps and lumps everywhere. But it's not beating me up to the point where, I would find it to be borderline uncomfortable. This is, firm, and it reminds you you're driving a body-on-frame vehicle, but it surprisingly soaks up the bumps well, so this is a nice surprise because I was expecting this thing to ride like absolute garbage like the Silverado EV did, but this is good, and it's important because remember, the Tahoe and the Suburban are going to be family cars, so you need them to have a good ride quality. They need to be comfortable, they need to be quiet. The body also feels really solid. I mean, going over these bumps, I don't feel a single squeak and rattle. These seats are also really comfortable. They essentially feel like your favorite living room chair, for example. They don't really have much in terms of bolstering extension. Oh, thank you, Rob. The cooled seat function also works well, which is important when you're driving around in like a warm place like Texas, for example. But overall, I am genuinely shocked with how Chevy has tuned the ride quality. I think the air suspension definitely makes a big difference here. Now, in terms of visibility, this is a big 3-row SUV, and you definitely have to get used to how large the vehicle is. It's a wide truck, like around 81.5 inches wide. The brakes also feel really good. They're not super mushy. They have tons of bite, but you still are trying to slow down a vehicle that weighs around 5,800 pounds. So you are going to have to give it some room to kind of slow down and give you some distance to actually slow the vehicle down. But view out of the front, the side is good. The view out of the back is nice with that digital camera rearview mirror, but as you can see when you fold it out of this view, you do have the head restraint kind of blocking your view a little bit. But overall, I think driving it around town, you just kind of have to get used to how big it is. But I am genuinely surprised about the ride quality of this thing. Now, for those of you who are used to driving like a crossover, midsize, or large SUV, this is where you're going to have to get used to the additional bulk. This vehicle is definitely not sporty. The steering in this car or in this truck is very light and numb. It is relatively precise, but it just doesn't give you much confidence. You feel the weight of the vehicle. It just feels like you're piloting around a really heavy and really wide and really big vehicle, which is fine. Nobody buys a Tahoe or a Suburban, for example, to go attack your favorite back road. That's one of the reasons why some of these smaller SUVs continue to be a little bit better in that regard. But merging onto the highway here, this is going to give us a good opportunity to test out the Super Cruise. The ride quality in these kind of conditions is also really nice. On the smoother pavement, the air suspension just kind of soaks up the bumps. This interior also stays pretty quiet. The road noise or tire noise isn't as deafening as I was expecting it to be, and that's probably because the High Country has a little bit more sound deadening materials versus some of the other trims, which is important. This is going to be a road trip ready car for a lot of people. I put my foot down here. The engine has a smooth note to it. It's a typical V8 sounds. Obviously, it's a little quiet. If you guys want a louder exhaust, feel free to take a look at the RST with its performance catback exhaust. That's going to give you a little bit more power. But this V8 it offers a good amount of torque, but you do have to rev the engine out a good deal. This is kind of where the twin turbo 6-cylinder options and the competitors just offer more low-end torque, especially when you're trying to get up to speed, when you're towing something, when you have the vehicle loaded up with a bunch of people. This is kind of where why I like a naturally aspirated V8. It does come with its compromises, and it's also still a little bit more of a thirstier vehicle versus some of the rivals. We won't be able to do a fuel economy test here, but when we get one back home, we'll see what we can get. This vehicle wasn't delivered with a full tank, but it's showing around 233 miles of range right now at 3/4 of a tank. So getting up to higher speeds here, this freeway is a little bit noisy with the concrete, but it's still a really nice vehicle to drive. You kind of have this great commanding view of the road, and then this is also where you get an opportunity to test out the Super Cruise function. Now, Super Cruise for me is still one of the best hands-free or the best hands-free driving assistance that you can get. It actually allows for true hands-free driving, and it also will execute lane changes for you, and it kind of does it in a manner that I think is really, really nice. Now, getting onto this interstate here, the way you can see if Super Cruise is available is you essentially look for a gray steering wheel icon right here in the instrument panel. It's showing me that icon is available, and that's because GM has a ton of like 750,000 maps that are logged in all of the North American freeways, so that's kind of where it allows it to work. Once I find a nice open area, I just push this button here. You can see Super Cruise is activated, and you'll see a green status bar on the steering wheel. It also lights up green over there in the instrument panel, and this is where I can essentially just sit here and drive hands-free. So I can adjust my distance, I can increase my speed, and then you adjust your distance right here on this little toggle. And you can see this is where a lot of people will easily buy this vehicle, especially if you plan to do road trips, is this Super Cruise functionality, because as you can see, it uses cameras and sensors to keep me centered in the lane. It also will kind of turn the vehicle as well. It'll follow the road along even like pretty sharp curves, and GM has also been expanding this Super Cruise availability into even some city streets as opposed to just being out on the highway. And the other great thing about Super Cruise is when you have the automatic lane change function turned on, it'll actually execute lane changes and move you out of the passing lane, or if there's a slow person in front of you, it'll move you into the passing lane. It'll do it automatically. It'll check the gap to make sure there's nobody there before it actually changes lanes, and it's just a really nice feature to have. So for example here, let's see if I can get it to execute a change here. So I'm turning on the signal, It's checking the gap, even though I probably shouldn't have done that. There's another Tahoe that's sitting here in front of me going pretty slow. But again, it matches the speed to kind of make sure you're at a safe following distance. And overall, you know, once you get used to it, it's pretty easy to trust the system, and it's just one of the best features you're going to find on a longer road trip. But overall, the Tahoe pretty much drives the same way that I remember it to. The V8 still makes pleasant sounds. It's smooth. It's not the most powerful feeling engine anymore, but it's got a really great 10-speed automatic transmission. Fuel economy isn't the best that you're going to find, but that's where you can kind of get the diesel if you want even better gas mileage. But overall, you know, if you guys have been waiting for the refresh version, you're trying to trade out of like your Expedition or your Armada or your Sequoia, for example, the driving feel of this thing is very traditional, but it also feels very modern, and the build quality on this high country is definitely up there in luxury car territory. So with just over 110,000 units sold in the US last year, the Chevrolet Tahoe was the best-selling body-on-frame large three-row SUV and outsold a lot of its competitors by a considerable margin. So obviously for 2025, Chevrolet made a lot of changes to this vehicle, but I also think that they are really good changes. The exterior styling of the vehicle, that's always subjective, but I particularly love the way the new headlights look with the new taillights. These massive 24-inch wheels, I might skip them because I think they're not really an attractive design in my eyes, but I think a 22-inch wheel or a 20-inch wheel is probably going to suffice. The interior is definitely a big upgrade. I especially love the massive 17.7-inch display, the Super Cruise, the comfortable seats, the roomy interior, the relatively good build quality. These models that we're driving here are really early pre-production versions, but they felt really solid going down the road. The 6.2-liter V8 engine basically is unchanged, and it's a really great engine. Smooth transmission, quick shifting, lots of torque and power everywhere, a nice sound, and if you guys want an even throatier sound, there's that performance package that you can get with the RST. You don't necessarily buy these for 0 to 60, but I do think that it's time for Chevrolet to consider offering a mild hybrid assistance for this powertrain. I'm also surprised they haven't gone to a twin-turbo 6-cylinder, but again, if you want a V8, this is one of the few options out there. We're going to drive the diesel version tomorrow, and we show you guys a full review on the Suburban. And really, if you're looking to purchase one of these vehicles, they are heading to dealerships now as we speak, and Chevrolet has already announced pricing, but we don't have the final pricing with all the options. Basically, if you want to get into a base Tahoe with two-wheel drive in the LS trim, it's going to start at around $58,500. It's about $2,000 more versus a 2024 model. That's plus a $1,995 destination charge. So you're looking at around 60 grand. That's right, 60 grand for the base price. When the heck did these things get so darn expensive? Now, most of you are going to probably step it up to an LT trim. The LT trim is going to cost you another couple thousand bucks. Four-wheel drive will also cost you another $2,500. If you guys want to go to a Suburban, it's around $3,000 more for the extra length. This high country trim that we're showing you is the top of the line version. It essentially has, you know, most of the features that you could possibly want. It starts at just over $80,000. That's right, you're now looking at over 80 grand for the high country. I don't have the final pricing of this model as of this filming, but I would suspect with the 24-inch wheels, the upcharge for the color, the rear seat entertainment package, I would say this model is probably around $86,000 to $87,000, which is just a stupid amount of money. But I also have to keep in mind, if you fully load like an Expedition or a Sequoia, for example, a Yukon is going to be more expensive. You can easily get these vehicles into the $100,000 territory, which I think this car here will probably top out just under 90, going to a Yukon that can top out at around 100 grand, and an Escalade that can top out probably in the $150,000 range. So unfortunately, that's just how expensive these vehicles have gotten. But with all the improvements that Chevrolet has made, if you guys can afford that price tag and you need a vehicle that can carry basically all your family members and their stuff and tow heavy loads, this is definitely still one of the best SUVs out there. So GM essentially made a lot of great upgrades. So with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2025 Chevrolet Tahoe in this high country trim level. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.